In this video, I'm about to show you 30 chocolate brands you have got to stay away from, and why, as well as 5 you should be picking up. Number 30. Hershey's. For over a century, Hershey's has been sold as the great American chocolate bar. It's the brand that built s'mores by the fire, sat in Halloween buckets, and lined grocery checkout aisles like an old friend. But behind the nostalgia lies a company that has quietly traded quality for profits, and the cost is being paid by consumers. Critics have long pointed to Hershey's signature tangy aftertaste, which comes from butyric acid, an ingredient that gives the chocolate a sour note many describe as off. It's a byproduct of cheapening recipes, cutting cocoa content, and adding more sugar and emulsifiers instead. In 2025, lawsuits piled on, accusing Hershey's of misleading customers about what's really inside their bars. Consumer watchdogs also flagged special dark varieties for exceeding California's Proposition 65 safety thresholds for lead and cadmium, raising alarms about long-term health effects. And the problems don't stop at the factory. Reuters investigations revealed Hershey's cocoa supply chain is still linked to child labor and deforestation in West Africa, despite decades of promises to clean it up. One former child worker described being beaten for moving too slowly while carrying sacks heavier than his own body. So the candy that feels like part of American tradition now comes with a bitter truth. Hershey's isn't a treat. It's a symbol of how corporations can take our trust, cheapen it, and sell it back with a smile. Number 29. Russell Stover. For decades, Russell Stover was the box of chocolates you'd see stacked at the front of grocery stores every Valentine's Day or Christmas. It was the safe gift, the candy your grandmother brought to church bake sales, the brand that felt polite and dependable. But today, Russell Stover has become the symbol of chocolate gone cheap. Shoppers across Walmart, CVS, and small-town grocers alike complain that the once-respected boxes are now filled with waxy, artificial-tasting chocolates that all blur into the same flavor. A 2024 Consumer Affairs survey found Russell Stover among the lowest-ranked boxed chocolates in America, with customers slamming the texture as chalky and the fillings as synthetic sugar paste. Amazon reviews echo the same. Stories of people buying a holiday box only to find half-melted stale pieces that tasted more like cardboard than cocoa. Even insiders admit the decline. Since Lindt acquired the company in 2014, cost-cutting has dominated production, with palm oil and corn syrup quietly replacing quality cocoa. The result? A brand once gifted with pride now feels more like a bargain bin filler at Walgreens or Dollar General. One disappointed customer put it bluntly. "I gave my wife Russell Stover for Valentine's Day, and she asked if I was mad at her." That joke stings because it captures the truth. Russell Stover didn't just lose its recipe, it lost its reputation. Number 28. Palmer Chocolate. If there's one brand that sparks groans the moment people see it, it's Palmer. Found in Walmart, CVS, Dollar Tree, and nearly every grocery store during Easter, Halloween, and Christmas, Palmer has earned a reputation as the cheapest chocolate you can buy, and not in a good way. Here's the problem. Much of Palmer's candy isn't even legally chocolate. Instead of cocoa butter, the ingredient list leans on palm oil, hydrogenated fats, and artificial flavors. That's why so many buyers describe it as tasting like wax or even crayons. In fact, the FDA has clear rules. If it doesn't contain enough cocoa butter, it can't be labeled milk chocolate. Palmer gets around this by calling products chocolate flavored. The backlash is everywhere. On Amazon and Walmart reviews, customers routinely give Palmer products 1 star, calling them the worst chocolate ever made and saying the texture is plastic or like biting a candle. Parents have even posted that their kids refuse to finish Palmer Easter bunnies, something almost unheard of with candy. The irony is that Palmer dominates holiday aisles because it's cheap and eye-catching. But behind the colorful foil, what you're really buying is filler, sugar and oils molded into festive shapes. For many Americans, Palmer isn't a treat at all. It's the taste of disappointment wrapped in shiny paper. Number 27. Lindt Excellence. For years, Lindt has sold itself as the gold standard of fine European chocolate. And their Excellence line, the sleek bars boasting 70%, 85%, even 90% cocoa, was marketed as the healthier choice. Shoppers at Walmart, Target, and Costco have picked them up believing they were buying quality, maybe even a heart-healthy treat. But recent findings paint a much darker picture. In 2023, and again in 2025, Consumer Reports and the Environmental Working Group tested dozens of dark chocolates. Lindt Excellence, 85% ranked among the highest for cadmium contamination, 0.96 micrograms per serving, nearly double California's Proposition 65 safe daily limit. Toxicologists warn that long-term exposure can damage kidneys and weaken bones, a particular threat to older Americans who already worry about fragile health. Customers have noticed the difference too. One reviewer on Amazon wrote, "I used to trust Lindt as premium, but the bitter aftertaste and the health warnings made me toss the bar in the trash. For a brand built on smooth luxury, that kind of betrayal cuts deep." And the ethical concerns don't stop there. Investigations in 2024 tied Lindt's cocoa supply to deforestation in West Africa, with thousands of protected acres cleared for cocoa farming. Pair that with reports of child labor in indirect suppliers, and that shiny excellence wrapper starts to look more like camouflage. What was once marketed as the most refined chocolate in the aisle now comes with a bitter warning. Sometimes luxury is just a label, hiding toxins and broken promises. Number 26. Godiva's Dark Chocolate. For decades, Godiva has dressed itself in gold foil and elegance, the brand that whispered romance. The heart-shaped box slipped across dinner tables, the golden bag carried proudly out of Walmart, Costco, or CVS. It sold more than chocolate, it sold the illusion of luxury. But recent investigations show that behind the shimmer, Godiva's dark chocolates carry something far less sweet. In 2023, and again in 2025, Consumer Reports tested dozens of popular dark chocolates. Godiva Signature Dark and 72% dark truffles were flagged for lead contamination, measuring over 1.1 micrograms per serving, above California's Proposition 65 daily safety limit. Toxicologists warned that over time, lead exposure can accelerate memory decline, damage kidneys, and weaken bones. For older Americans already guarding fragile health, that's not an indulgence, it's a risk. And while health concerns raised alarms, ethics twisted the knife deeper. Amnesty International reported in 2024 that Godiva's cocoa sourcing remains tied to child labor in West Africa, despite years of promises and glossy responsible sourcing campaigns. Consumers paying premium prices discovered they weren't buying safety or integrity, just guilt wrapped in gold foil. One disillusioned shopper summed it up in a review, "For $30 a box, I expected quality. Instead, I got overpriced chocolate with a bitter aftertaste of betrayal." Godiva may market itself as timeless sophistication, but its dark chocolate tells a darker truth. Luxury doesn't always mean safe or honest. Number 25. Who Chocolate. Who built its name on being the healthy chocolate? The packaging screams no weird stuff, simple ingredients, and it's proudly stocked in Walmart, Target, and Whole Foods for shoppers who want a guilt-free treat. But behind the clean labels, Who's dark chocolate has faced the same ugly problems as the mainstream brands it claims to rise above. In 2023, a class action lawsuit was filed in New York, alleging that Who's 70% and Simple Dark bars contained unsafe levels of lead, a known neurotoxin, while the company continued to market them as wholesome and pure. The complaint accused Who of misleading customers who believed they were paying extra for a safer product. Independent lab tests in 2024 added fuel to the fire. Who's organic snacking and baking dark chocolate gems were flagged for excessive lead and cadmium, with toxicologists warning that these levels could contribute to kidney damage, bone weakness, and neurological problems if eaten regularly. For older Americans already fighting health concerns, that turns better for you into a dangerous illusion. Who responded with reassurances, claiming their products are tested and compliant with safety standards. But critics argue those statements are little more than greenwashing broad promises that dodge the real findings. So when you see Who's clean branding lined up in the organic aisle, remember, the wrapper may say purity, but the science says otherwise. Number 24. Reese's Chocolate. Few candies feel more American than Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Found in every Walmart checkout aisle, stacked in Target, and stuffed into Halloween buckets for generations, Reese's has been marketed as the ultimate marriage of milk chocolate and peanut butter. But peel back the orange wrapper and the truth isn't nearly as sweet. Start with the ingredients. What's sold as milk chocolate is loaded with PGPR, a cheap emulsifier that replaces cocoa butter, and TBHQ, a petroleum-based preservative linked in studies to immune system disruption. Instead of rich cocoa, you're mostly biting into sugar, oils, and additives. Nutritionists point out that a single 2-cup package packs more sugar than a glazed donut. Consumers have taken notice too. In recent years, class action lawsuits accused Hershey's of misleading advertising, showing peanut butter cups bursting with creamy filling, while real products are thinner, greasier, and dominated by sweeteners. Complaints across Walmart and Amazon reviews echo the same. The cups feel smaller, taste sweeter, and leave a waxy film on the tongue. And while Reese's leans heavily on nostalgia, that nostalgia masks decline. What once felt like a balanced chocolate and peanut butter treat has become a processed product where the peanut butter is bulked out with hydrogenated oils and the chocolate barely qualifies as chocolate. For millions of shoppers, Reese's still looks like a familiar comfort. But comfort foods built on cheap shortcuts come with a bitter truth. The candy you loved as a kid may be more chemistry experiment than chocolate today. Number 23. Kinder. For decades, Kinder has been the picture of childhood joy. The little egg with a toy inside, the bright red and white packaging stacked in Walmart and Target aisles, the candy that promised fun as much as flavor. Parents bought them thinking they were harmless treats for kids, but recent history shows Kinder's sweetness comes with a bitter warning. In 2022, Ferrero, the maker of Kinder, faced a massive global scandal. Kinder Surprise and Kinder Joy products were recalled in more than 100 countries, including the United States, after they were linked to a salmonella outbreak that sickened hundreds of children across Europe and North America. Investigations found the contamination traced back to a Belgian factory, with health inspectors accusing the company of delaying reports and failing to act quickly. For a brand marketed directly to kids, that failure hit parents like a betrayal. And it's not just the contamination. Nutritionists have long criticized Kinder chocolates for being packed with sugar, hydrogenated oils, and artificial flavorings, more junk than chocolate. What looks like a small treat often delivers a blood sugar spike disguised as fun. Parents who once thought they were buying joy now see risk, bacteria outbreaks, cheap ingredients, and corporate shortcuts. A Reddit commenter summed it up bluntly: "Nothing says love like giving your kid candy that got recalled for salmonella." Kinder markets happiness in a shiny wrapper, but peel it open and you find a troubling lesson. Sometimes the candy marketed hardest to children carries the biggest hidden dangers. Number 22. Nestle Milk Chocolate. Nestle's milk chocolate has been a kitchen and checkout aisle staple for generations. From Crunch Bars in Walmart to Toll House chips in every Target baking aisle, the brand is woven into American childhoods. But behind the red logo and the nostalgia, Nestle's milk chocolate products have faced serious concerns that go far beyond taste. In 2025, FDA testing flagged Nestle Toll House milk chocolate chips for lead levels above California's Proposition 65 daily safety limits. That placed even the baking chocolate parents use in cookies under suspicion. Earlier recalls have hit Nestle milk chocolate products for undeclared allergens, including peanuts and soy, a dangerous oversight for families with dietary restrictions. Consumers also complain the chocolate itself has changed. Bars and Crunch Squares, once seen as creamy, are now described as waxy, oily, and overly sweet. Ingredient labels tell the story. Cocoa butter replaced with PGPR, a cheap emulsifier, plus added oils that dilute flavor and quality. What's marketed as classic milk chocolate is increasingly a processed imitation. And the ethical picture is just as troubling. Investigations have tied Nestle's cocoa supply chain to child labor and deforestation in West Africa, despite years of promises to reform. For shoppers who still slip Crunch Bars into lunchboxes or pour Toll House chips into batter, the truth is uncomfortable. Nestle's milk chocolate may look familiar, but it carries risks that no recipe can hide. Number 21. M&M. Few candies are more iconic than M&M's. The colorful shells have filled Halloween buckets, movie theater cups, and Walmart checkout lanes for decades. Melts in your mouth, not in your hand became one of the most famous slogans in advertising. But while the candy looks playful, what's inside those little shells has sparked serious health concerns. The bright colors come from artificial dyes like red 40, yellow 5 and 6, and blue 1. These dyes are so controversial that the European Union requires warning labels about possible links to hyperactivity in children. California recently moved toward banning several food additives found in popular candies, with M&M's at the center of the debate. Toxicologists have long pointed to studies tying these dyes to behavioral issues, allergic reactions, and potential carcinogenic effects when consumed over time. Mars, the maker of M&Ms, has faced pressure for years to remove the artificial colors. In 2016, the company pledged to phase them out, but as of 2025, M&Ms in US stores still contain them. Meanwhile, consumers complain the chocolate inside has been cheapened with additives and oils, leaving it waxy compared to past decades. So while the bright shells still sparkle under grocery store lights, parents and health experts warn that M&Ms are far from harmless fun. Behind the rainbow colors may be more than sugar rush. It may be risk dressed up as candy-coated joy. Number 20. Dove. Dove has always sold itself as the elegant choice. Silky wrappers, indulgent taglines, and ads that promise a moment of pure luxury. You'll find Dove bars and bags stacked at Walmart, Target, Walgreens, and CVS, pitched as the smoother, more refined alternative to everyday candy. But beneath the shine, Dove chocolate has been caught up in the same troubling issues as the rest of big chocolate. Independent tests in 2023 and 2024 flagged Dove dark and milk chocolate bars for elevated levels of lead and cadmium, with some samples breaching California's Proposition 65 daily safety limits. Toxicologists warn that long-term exposure to these metals can weaken bones, strain kidneys, and harm memory, risks that hit older adults especially hard. For a brand that markets itself as indulgence you can trust, those findings feel less like luxury and more like liability. And then there's the recipe itself. What once leaned on rich cocoa butter now often includes palm oil and emulsifiers like PGPR, cheap shortcuts that dilute flavor while cutting costs. Shoppers have noticed. Reviews on major retailers call Dove oily, waxy, and not what it used to be. Dove still presents itself as the sophisticated step up from Hershey's or Mars bars. But the data tells a different story. Even the so-called premium options may be serving more additives, cheap fats, and hidden risks than real chocolate. Number 19. Feastables. When YouTube star Mr. Beast launched Feastables, it was pitched as the chocolate bar that would fix everything wrong with candy. Clean ingredients, simple recipes, a healthier option you could proudly grab at Walmart, Target, or 7-Eleven. For millions of fans, it looked like a fresh start. But just like the giants Feastables set out to replace, the bars quickly found themselves under fire. In 2023, a recall was issued after Feastables failed to properly declare allergens like peanuts and milk on certain bars. For families with allergies, that wasn't a small oversight, it was a potentially life-threatening risk. Around the same time, reports surfaced of customers finding foreign objects like plastic fragments in the bars, echoing the very safety scandals Mr. Beast claimed his company would avoid. And the disappointment didn't stop at safety. Nutritionists noted that while marketed as better for you, cane sugar remains the #1 ingredient, leaving the bars nutritionally similar to Hershey's or Nestle. Consumers, meanwhile, flooded Amazon and Reddit with complaints. Chalky texture, bland flavor, and inconsistent quality. By late 2023, a class action lawsuit accused Feastables of deceptive marketing, arguing the hype about healthier chocolate masked a product not much different from what's already on shelves. Feastables promised revolution. But for many shoppers, it delivered little more than another bar with slick marketing. The lesson? Even the new kids on the block can repeat the oldest mistakes in candy. Number 18. Snickers. Snickers is one of the best-selling candy bars in the world. Found in every Walmart checkout lane, packed into Target multi-packs, and marketed as the bar that really satisfies. But the truth is, Snickers has a history of cutting corners that should leave consumers questioning what's actually under that chocolate coating. In 2016, Mars, the maker of Snickers, was forced to recall millions of bars in 55 countries after plastic fragments were discovered in the candy. It was one of the largest chocolate recalls in modern history. Regulators warned that if swallowed, the plastic could cause internal injuries. For a product that had built its reputation on trust and consistency, the scandal left a lasting mark. The recipe itself has also shifted over the years. Instead of relying solely on cocoa butter, Snickers now uses PGPR, a cheap emulsifier derived from castor beans, to replace more expensive ingredients. Alongside hydrogenated oils and artificial flavors, the bar delivers less true chocolate and more chemistry. Nutritionists point out that a single bar packs nearly 30 grams of sugar, plus saturated fats that add up fast. Snickers markets itself as fuel, the candy bar you can count on when you're hungry. But data tells a different story. Cost-cutting emulsifiers, a recall that spanned continents, and an ingredient label closer to a science project than simple chocolate. Number 17. Baby Ruth. Baby Ruth bars have been around for nearly a century, wrapped in red, white, and blue as a symbol of all American candy. Once marketed as hearty fuel, they're still sold in Walmart, Target, Walgreens, and gas stations nationwide. But the classic bar of peanuts, nougat, and chocolate has earned a troubling reputation in recent decades. Start with the recalls. In 2018, Ferrero Candy Company, which took over Baby Ruth from Nestle, issued a recall after reports of metal fragments being found in the bars. Similar issues with mislabeling and undeclared allergens have hit the brand over the years, shaking confidence in what consumers thought was a reliable staple. For candy marketed so heavily to kids, those aren't small mistakes. Then there's the nutritional profile. A single Baby Ruth bar carries nearly 30 grams of sugar and a heavy dose of saturated fat, putting it on par with a dessert rather than a snack. Nutritionists warn that it offers little more than empty calories, with virtually no nutritional benefit. Critics argue it's more coating than quality, bulked up with additives and emulsifiers instead of real cocoa richness. Online reviews regularly call the bar overly sweet and cheap tasting, a shadow of what older generations remember. Baby Ruth still trades on nostalgia, but in today's market the reality is harsher. Recalls, sugar overload, and a recipe that feels more like filler than chocolate. Number 16. Endangered Species. Endangered Species chocolate looks like the bar you can feel good about. Wrapped in images of elephants, tigers, and sea turtles, and stocked at Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, and Kroger, it promises more than sweetness. A portion of profits goes to wildlife conservation, and the branding screams ethics, fair trade, organic, sustainable. For years, shoppers picked these bars believing they were buying both quality and conscience. But tests tell a different story. In 2022, and again in 2023, Consumer Reports flagged endangered species dark chocolate bars, including the 72% and 88% varieties, for excessive cadmium. Cadmium is a toxic heavy metal that accumulates in cocoa. Over time, exposure has been linked to kidney damage, brittle bones, and increased cancer risk. California's Proposition 65 sets strict limits, and these bars crossed the line. For older consumers already concerned about bone strength and memory, that's not indulgence, it's risk wrapped in eco-friendly packaging. The betrayal cuts deep because the brand leans so heavily on trust. Customers pay extra, believing they're supporting wildlife and buying a safer, healthier chocolate. Instead, they may be swallowing contaminants that undermine their health. Endangered Species markets itself as chocolate with a cause. But when the science shows dangerous metals inside, the cause starts to look less like saving animals and more like saving face. Number 15. Great Value. Great Value is Walmart's answer to every aisle. Need ketchup? They've got it. Frozen pizza? It's there. And of course, chocolate bars stacked right alongside the national brands. For millions of families on a budget, grabbing that blue and white package feels like a smart choice. The same sweet indulgence at half the price. But what if that bargain bar came with a hidden cost your body might pay down the road? In 2022 and 2023, Consumer Reports tested dozens of dark chocolate bars from major retailers. Buried in the results was an uncomfortable truth. Walmart's own Great Value dark chocolate was among those flagged for excessive lead and cadmium levels, breaching California's Proposition 65 daily safety limits. For older adults, those aren't abstract numbers. Long-term exposure can weaken bones, strain kidneys, and even accelerate memory decline. And quality? Reviews repeatedly slam Great Value chocolate as waxy, overly sweet, and cheapened with emulsifiers like PGPR and vegetable oils that stretch the cocoa further but rob the flavor. What you end up with isn't a decadent treat. It's a budget product built on cutting corners. So while the price tag whispers value, the reality may be the opposite. Sometimes cheap chocolate costs more than you think, not at the checkout, but in the long run. Number 14. Ferrero Rocher. Ferrero Rocher sits in stores like a crown jewel. The gold foil glistens, the plastic box feels like a gift, and the ads sell it as the ultimate symbol of luxury. For decades, people have passed these little spheres at holidays as if they were sharing treasure. But peel back the glitter, and what you really get is a case study in how packaging can fool us. Underneath the glamour, Ferrero Rocher is less chocolate and more filler, Nutritionists point out that less than a third of each ball is actual chocolate. The rest? Layers of sugar, hydrogenated vegetable oils, wafers, and, most controversially, palm oil. That palm oil doesn't just add calories. It's linked to deforestation in Southeast Asia and the destruction of orangutan habitats. Luxury shouldn't come at the cost of a rainforest. And then there's the safety record. In 2022, Ferrero, the same parent company behind Rocher and Kinder, recalled millions of chocolates in Europe after a salmonella outbreak traced to a Belgian factory. While Rocher wasn't the main product recalled, the connection was enough to rattle trust worldwide. So yes, Ferrero Rocher looks rich, but behind the gold wrapper is cheap candy dressed in designer clothes. The only thing premium here is the marketing. Number 13. Three Musketeers. The Three Musketeers bar has been around since 1932, promising a lighter, whipped nougat covered in chocolate. At first, it was sold as 3 pieces in one package: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, hence the name. Today, it's a single bar, marketed as a lighter indulgence compared to its candy aisle rivals. But that lightness is exactly the problem. Bite into a Three Musketeers and you'll notice there's almost no real chocolate flavor. That's because the bar is mostly sugar and corn syrup, whipped with additives to create that airy nougat texture. Nutritionists rank it among the worst candy bars for empty calories. One serving carries over 36 grams of sugar, more than you'd get in a can of Coke. And to stretch costs further, Mars, the parent company, uses PGPR, an emulsifier, in place of higher cocoa butter levels. That's not craftsmanship, it's cost-cutting. The disappointment doesn't stop at the label. Consumer complaints describe the nougat as chalky, artificial, and leaving a waxy aftertaste. Compared to rivals like Snickers or Milky Way, it feels hollow, literally. And while nostalgia might keep it in checkout aisles, the reality is that Three Musketeers delivers little more than a sugar rush wrapped in foil. A classic? Maybe. But one of the emptiest chocolates you could buy today. Number 12. Ghirardelli. For many Americans, Ghirardelli feels like a slice of San Francisco tradition. The name evokes old-fashioned quality, the kind of chocolate you proudly tuck into Christmas stockings or place in a candy dish for guests. The company sells itself on heritage and craftsmanship, but in recent years, the shine has worn off the wrapper. In 2023, Consumer Reports testing revealed Ghirardelli's intense dark, 86% cacao squares contained cadmium levels, averaging 0.88 micrograms per serving, high enough to exceed California's Proposition 65 exposure limits. Toxicologists warned that long-term exposure to cadmium can weaken bones and stress kidneys, especially in older adults who are most vulnerable. For a brand that markets itself as crafted with care, those results rang alarm bells. And the problems don't end in the lab. Investigations by Bloomberg tied Ghirardelli's parent company, Lindt and Sprüngli, to illegal cocoa sourcing practices, including deforestation and land grabs in West Africa. Farmers described being forced off ancestral land so cocoa plantations could expand, leaving behind environmental damage that can't be undone. Meanwhile, Ghirardelli continues to advertise its chocolates as premium, charging more while quietly cutting corners. For loyal fans, it feels like a betrayal, the trusted neighbor who smiled wide while selling you a product laced with toxins and hidden exploitation. Sometimes, nostalgia blinds us. But the data says Ghirardelli isn't the safe classic it once seemed. Number 11, Trader Joe's chocolate. Trader Joe's has built its empire on trust. For decades, shoppers have filled carts believing the quirky store brand stood for health, quality, and better ingredients. So, when you see their neatly wrapped chocolate bars on the shelf, organic, fair trade, sometimes even labeled super dark, it feels like a safe choice. But in recent years, that trust has been cracked wide open. In 2022, and again in 2023, Consumer Reports testing flagged Trader Joe's dark chocolate bars, including the 72% cacao and pound plus varieties, for containing excessive levels of lead and cadmium, exceeding California's Proposition 65 daily limits. Lawsuits quickly followed, accusing Trader Joe's of misleading customers by failing to disclose these risks. For older consumers especially, these aren't harmless trace amounts. Long-term exposure to lead and cadmium can damage bones, impair kidney function, and accelerate memory decline. The betrayal stings deeper because Trader Joe's markets its chocolate as a better-for-you alternative to mass-market brands. Customers thought they were buying clean, trustworthy chocolate, not the same toxic baggage found in cheaper bars. Online, frustrated fans posted photos of half-eaten Pound Plus bars with captions like, "I bought this to be healthy. Now I feel duped." For a company that sells itself on transparency and customer loyalty, these findings left a bitter aftertaste. The lesson? Even the brands that look the most wholesome sometimes hide the darkest truths. Number 10. Cadbury. Cadbury might sound like a classic name in chocolate, but here in the US, what you're getting isn't the same thing people rave about overseas. That's because the rights to Cadbury in America are owned by Hershey, and they've reformulated the bars to fit their own production style. The result? A product many fans say tastes flat, too sweet, and nothing like the original creamy UK dairy milk. Walk into Walmart, Target, or your local grocery store, and you'll spot Cadbury in its iconic purple wrapper, dairy milk, caramello, creme eggs around Easter. But if you turn the package over, you'll see manufactured by the Hershey Company. That little line explains why Cadbury here doesn't taste like Cadbury in London or Sydney. It's a different recipe altogether, with more sugar, less cocoa, and a heavier reliance on additives. Critics point out this US version lacks the smoothness and depth of flavor that made Cadbury famous. In fact, when reviewers ranked chocolate bars, Cadbury Dairy Milk in the US landed near the bottom, with complaints of waxy texture and even blooming, that white film that appears when chocolate isn't handled or stored properly. So, while Cadbury carries a legendary name, the American shelves don't quite deliver on that promise. It's one of those brands where nostalgia meets reality, and the reality is, you're not getting the real thing. Number 9. Green and Blacks. Green and Blacks built its reputation on being the ethical chocolate. The name itself was meant to signal values: green for organic and sustainable, black for rich cocoa content. Founded in the early 90s, the brand promised a cleaner, more conscious alternative to the candy aisle giants. But today, what you find on US shelves tells a different story. After Cadbury acquired Green and Blacks in 2005, and Cadbury itself was later taken over by Mondelez International, the brand's independence and its original ethos began to erode. Shoppers may still see organic and fair trade plastered on the wrappers, but not every bar qualifies anymore. Their Velvet Edition line, for example, dropped the fair trade and organic certifications, replacing them with Mondelez's Cocoa Life program, a move many longtime fans called a betrayal. The bigger concern came when independent testing raised red flags. Consumer Reports found certain Green and Black's dark chocolate bars contained levels of lead and cadmium above California's daily limits. That's not just disappointing for a brand built on purity, it's potentially dangerous. Adding to the trouble, a class action lawsuit even accused the company of misleading labeling, noting that bars advertised as 70% cacao actually listed cocoa, not cacao, as the main ingredient. So, while the packaging still sells the image of a conscious, upscale chocolate, the reality is murkier. Green and Blacks may not be the safe, ethical choice many believe it to be. Number 8. Choceur. Aldi has built its name on bargain groceries, and its in-house chocolate line, Choceur, looks like it should be a hidden gem. The packaging is sleek, the flavors sound European, and the price tag is undeniably low. But bite into a bar, and the illusion quickly falls apart. Shoppers expecting a smooth, rich chocolate experience are often met with disappointment. Choceur has been criticized for being overly sweet with only a faint cocoa presence. Instead of the silky texture promised on the wrapper, the bars can taste waxy or even grainy, leaving behind an artificial aftertaste that lingers unpleasantly. For many, it feels less like chocolate and more like candy dressed up to look refined. The ingredients explain a lot. Aldi leans heavily on sugar and cheaper oils to cut costs, which means there's less real cocoa butter to provide the melt-in-your-mouth quality that defines true chocolate. It's the same strategy used across some of Aldi's knockoff products: copy the look of a premium import but swap in lower-grade fillers. Yes, Choceur is cheap, and some fans defend it as good enough for the price. But when you market yourself as a European-style treat, expectations rise. In this case, the reality doesn't match the promise, making Choceur a disappointing weak link in Aldi's lineup. Number 7. Signature Select. Walk into a Safeway, Albertsons, or any of the grocery chains under the Albertsons Company's umbrella, and you'll spot their store brand, Signature Select. It covers everything from frozen pizzas to soda, but their chocolate bars and baking chips deserve a closer look, and not in a good way. Signature Select was introduced in 2016 as a way to unify the company's many private labels. On paper, it was supposed to compete with Walmart's Great Value or Target's Good and Gather, giving shoppers cheaper versions of everyday items. But when it comes to chocolate, the results are disappointing. Critics and casual shoppers alike complain that Signature Select chocolate is bland, overly sugary, and lacking in real cocoa richness. Baking chips don't melt smoothly, often leaving clumps or a greasy film instead of the silky consistency you'd expect from proper chocolate. Bars sold in the candy aisle look decent enough in their wrappers, but frequently taste artificial, with a waxy mouthfeel that signals heavy reliance on fillers like palm oil instead of cocoa butter. Sure, it's cheap, and budget-minded shoppers may grab it without a second thought, but if you actually care about flavor or texture, Signature Select chocolate feels more like a knockoff than a true alternative. It's a reminder that not every bargain store brand is worth tossing in your cart. Number 6. Fanny May. Fanny May once stood as a proud Chicago institution, the kind of chocolate brand people trusted for holidays, anniversaries, and special gifts. Founded in 1922, it carried the aura of tradition and quality, something you could rely on. But what many don't realize is that the brand you see today is not the same Fanny May your parents or grandparents enjoyed. After multiple changes in ownership and expansion into mass production, the quality has slipped, and so has consumer trust. One of the biggest issues is inconsistency. Boxes of Fanny May often arrive with overly sugary fillings, stale textures, or chocolates that just don't taste fresh. And it hasn't been free of safety scares either. In 2014, nearly 12,000 boxes of its assorted chocolates were recalled because they contained undeclared peanuts, a serious risk for anyone with allergies. Similar recalls popped up again in later years, reinforcing concerns that the company isn't paying attention where it matters most: consumer safety. It's worth noting that Fanny May is mostly a Midwestern brand, found in Walgreens, Jewel-Osco, and grocery chains across Illinois, Ohio, and Michigan. Outside the region, it's far less recognized. For Chicago locals, it's disheartening to see such an iconic name reduced to grocery filler. But for many others across the country, Fanny May barely registers at all. Number 5. Hammond's Candies. Hammond's Candies presents itself as a nostalgic, whimsical brand, oversized bars, quirky shapes, and fun packaging. But beneath the playful image, this company has raised real concerns. Despite being more of a novelty candy maker than a serious chocolatier, Hammond's has already landed in trouble with food safety regulators. In 2024, Hammond's recalled its dark chocolate-filled mini waffle cones because they contained undeclared milk, a dangerous oversight for anyone with allergies. The recall stretched across 38 states, and D, C, and the FDA classified it as Class 2, serious enough to draw national attention. 2 years earlier, in 2022, Hammond's had to recall its salted caramel cookies after discovering they contained undeclared peanuts. For a company that markets itself as premium and family-friendly, these repeated lapses suggest sloppy internal controls. These may not be headline-grabbing contamination scandals, but they matter. If a brand cannot guarantee accurate labeling, what confidence should consumers have in the rest of its process, from sourcing cocoa to ensuring freshness? For many, Hammond's remains a cute brand to pick up at gift shops or discount stores. But for consumers who value consistency and safety, its recent history should raise real doubts about whether it deserves a place in your pantry. Number 4. Tony's Chocolonely. Tony's Chocolonely loves to sell itself as the good guy of the chocolate aisle. Bright, funky wrappers, oversized bars, and a mission statement about saving the cocoa industry from child labor, it all feels noble. And to be fair, that pitch has worked. Walk into Target, Walgreens, or Whole Foods, and you'll see Tony's sitting there with a higher price tag, daring you to feel guilty if you don't buy it. But here's the ugly reality. In 2024, Tony's had to recall its dark almond sea salt and everything bar because people were finding stones inside the chocolate. Stones, not crunchy almonds, not fun toffee bits, actual rocks from the almond supply chain. Imagine shelling out $6 for ethical chocolate, taking a bite, and nearly chipping a tooth on a pebble. That's not just a slip-up. That's a brand exposing how shaky its quality control really is. And here's the kicker. Tony's is supposed to be the careful one, the brand that does things better than Hershey or Nestle. Yet, they couldn't even keep rocks out of the candy. If the ethical guys can't get the basics right, Maybe the shiny wrappers and feel-good slogans aren't worth the premium after all. Number 3. Lake Champlain Chocolates. Lake Champlain Chocolate sells itself as Vermont's pride. Artisanal, small batch, locally made sweets wrapped in the kind of branding that screams farm-to-table purity. For years, it's been the go-to gift shop brand in New England, a little piece of Vermont luxury you could trust. But even artisanal brands can let their guard down. And in 2021, Lake Champlain faced a recall that made people wonder if the shine was just a marketing veneer. The company had to recall several of its supposedly premium products, from milk chocolate, sea salt caramels to holiday coins, because they might have contained plastic contamination. Plastic. In artisan chocolate. For a brand that charges a premium and pushes its image of handcrafted care, the discovery was a slap in the face to loyal customers. No one buying a $5 a bar Vermont chocolate expects to bite into something that belongs in a recycling bin. While the company handled the recall, the damage was already done. If a craft chocolatier can't keep something as basic as plastic out of its sweets, how much better are they really than the mass-market brands they love to look down on? Sometimes the fancy label and boutique story hide the same shortcuts as the big guys. Number 2. Elmer Chocolate. If you grew up in the South, you've probably seen Elmer Chocolate boxes stacked high around Valentine's or Easter. The brand has been around for over a century, selling itself as a tradition, the kind of gift you grab at a grocery store when you want to look thoughtful on the cheap. But tradition doesn't always equal quality, and Elmer has built a reputation that's more waxy filler than fine chocolate. Customers have long complained that Elmer's seasonal assortments taste artificial, with a texture closer to candle wax than cocoa. The fillings are often syrupy sweet, the kind of thing you take one bite of and then quietly put back in the box. And unlike premium chocolatiers, Elmer doesn't exactly hide its reliance on cheap ingredients. That's how it keeps the price low enough to move millions of units during holiday rushes. Ownership hasn't helped its image either. Once family-run, Elmer was taken over by the Nelson family, and in 2025, a majority stake was sold to the Hoffman family of companies, a private equity firm with dozens of holdings. That kind of corporate shuffle usually means one thing: efficiency first, quality second. Elmer may still dominate the seasonal candy aisle, but for anyone looking for actual chocolate worth eating, the brand is more nostalgia than substance. Number 1. Guylian. Guylian is one of those brands that looks classy on the outside. Seashell-shaped pralines in shiny boxes, a little Belgian flag on the label, and a price tag just high enough to make you think it's premium. For decades, it's been a duty-free and holiday staple, stacked up in Walmart, Costco, and Walgreens around Christmas and Valentine's. But behind the pretty packaging, Guylian's reputation has been sliding. The company is no longer Belgian-owned. It was bought by Lotte Confectionery, a South Korean conglomerate, back in 2008. Since then, longtime fans have complained the recipes taste cheaper, the fillings are cloyingly sweet, and freshness isn't always guaranteed. What used to feel like a small indulgence now gets dismissed as tourist chocolate, the kind of thing you grab at an airport kiosk and regret later. And Guylian hasn't been free from safety problems either. In 2016, certain assortments were recalled for undeclared milk and soy allergens, a serious risk for consumers who trusted the brand's labeling. Even without major contamination scandals, repeated allergen slip-ups suggest a lack of care in production, exactly the kind of corner-cutting you'd expect when quality gives way to volume. Guylian still cashes in on its seashell gimmick, but for anyone expecting true Belgian craft, it's mostly shiny foil wrapped around disappointment. However, don't fret, as not all brands tell the same story. Here are 5 in which you need to get in your cart. Number 5. Alter Eco. Not every chocolate brand is cutting corners. Alter Eco proves that you can make something indulgent without loading it up with junk. Walk into a Whole Foods, Sprouts, or even the natural foods aisle at Target, and you'll spot their bright wrappers lined up among the so-called premium bars. Unlike a lot of the competition, Alter Eco actually delivers on the promise of clean, ethical chocolate. Every bar is organic, fair trade, and non-GMO, with ingredients you can pronounce. No fillers, no artificial flavors, no cheap vegetable oils, just real cocoa, real sugar, and sometimes simple additions like quinoa, sea salt, or crisp mint. They also push sustainability hard, using recyclable packaging and supporting regenerative agriculture. That's not just marketing fluff, they've built their reputation on it. Taste-wise, Alter Eco leans dark, with smooth texture and a rich cocoa punch that doesn't leave you with that waxy, sugary aftertaste you get from mass-market bars. And while the brand appeals to health-conscious shoppers, it's not health food chocolate that tastes like cardboard. People buy it because it's actually good. In a sea of brands chasing profits with gimmicks and shortcuts, Alter Eco stands out as chocolate you can feel good about eating and still enjoy every bite. Number 4. Toblerone. Few chocolates are as instantly recognizable as Toblerone. The triangular bar, with its peaks and valleys, is a design that has outlived trends for more than a century. Originally created in Switzerland in 1908, Toblerone has become a global staple, found everywhere from Walmart and Target to CVS, Costco, and airport duty-free shops. For many, it's the kind of chocolate that still feels like a treat, even when it's sitting in a grocery store aisle. Owned today by Mondelez International, Toblerone has managed to hold on to its reputation better than most corporate-owned brands. The bar's distinctive mix of Swiss milk chocolate, nougat, almonds, and honey has remained largely unchanged, and that consistency is a big reason people keep coming back. Unlike other mass-market brands that quietly cheapen recipes or swap ingredients, Toblerone still delivers on the taste that made it famous. Sure, it's not a boutique single-origin craft bar, but it doesn't need to be. Toblerone has carved out a sweet spot as an everyday chocolate that actually tastes good, without the scandals or shortcuts that have tainted so many others. When you crack off one of those little peaks, you know exactly what you're going to get, and that reliability is rare in today's candy aisle. Number 3. Choco Love. Choco Love is one of those rare brands that manages to hit shelves nationwide without selling out its integrity. Based in Boulder, Colorado, the company has been making Belgian-style chocolate bars since the 1990s, and you'll find them in Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger chains, and even plenty of mainstream supermarkets. Unlike many so-called premium brands that quietly cut corners, Choco Love has built its name on consistency and quality. Every bar is made with non-GMO ingredients and real cocoa butter, not the cheap substitutes that ruin the texture of so many mass-market chocolates. They also emphasize ethical sourcing, supporting programs to improve conditions for cocoa farmers. And they do it without turning every wrapper into a lecture. Instead, Choco Love sneaks a little poetry into the experience. Each bar comes with a classic love poem printed inside the wrapper. It's a small touch, but it reflects the care they put into the brand. Taste-wise, Choco Love delivers what chocolate is supposed to deliver: smooth texture, balanced sweetness, and bold flavors. Whether it's their extra strong dark bars or more playful options like almonds and sea salt, the chocolate doesn't taste watered down or artificial. It tastes like what you paid for, real chocolate done right. In a landscape full of gimmicks and shortcuts, Choco Love quietly proves that honesty and quality can still win. Number 2. Ritter Sport. Ritter Sport may not shout as loudly as Hershey or Mars in the US, but anyone who's tried it knows it plays in a different league. This German brand has been making chocolate since 1912, and their square bars have become a signature, easy to break, easy to share, and packed with flavor combinations that feel a step above the usual grocery store fare. You'll spot Ritter Sport in Walmart, Target, Kroger, CVS, and Walgreens, proving you don't need to hunt down a specialty shop to find real quality. What makes Ritter Sport stand out is its commitment to honest ingredients. They use real cocoa butter, not filler oils, and their cocoa sourcing has leaned heavily towards sustainability and ethical practices. Unlike so many mass-market brands that disguise bland chocolate under a mountain of sugar, Ritter Sport manages to balance sweetness with true cocoa character. Whether it's the iconic hazelnut bar, marzipan, or quirky flavors like cornflake, there's a richness and crunch that actually feels satisfying. And here's the best part. Ritter Sport hasn't been tied to the endless cycle of recalls, lawsuits, and cost-cutting scandals that dog so many of its competitors. It's just straightforward, good-tasting chocolate that lives up to its reputation. Sometimes the simple square really does win. Number 1. See's Candies. See's Candies is proof that not every chocolate brand has lost its way. Founded in California back in 1921, See's has built a reputation that has endured for over a century, and it hasn't had to sell out to do it. Walk into one of their classic black and white shops, or spot their holiday gift boxes at Costco, and you'll find chocolate that actually tastes the way you hope it will: rich, buttery, and fresh. What sets See's apart is its consistency. They've resisted the race to the bottom ingredient swaps that gutted so many other chocolate makers. No cutting cocoa butter with cheap oils, no drowning flavor in sugar. Instead, they've kept recipes that work, from classic truffles to their iconic peanut brittle. And unlike the endless list of brands tied up in recalls or contamination scandals, See's has managed to stay squeaky clean. That kind of record isn't luck, it's discipline. Taste-wise, See's still delivers indulgence without gimmicks. Their chocolates don't pretend to be artisanal or luxury, yet they hold their own against both. For many, a box of See's is still the gold standard of American chocolate. In a candy aisle full of disappointment, See's proves that tradition and quality can still mean something.